Where is the pop period?
Downtown, right next to Centennial Park. This just shows you that it's very important, but it's going unnoticed. We're not doing the initiatives. So it comes down to being able to break it down and absorb it too. Yes. So they have the awareness.
So they have the awareness?
Yes.
Are they paying attention?
Correct. Type B is bizarre or idiosyncratic in nature, so it's all in your head. So that's very alarming.
It seems to me that also there was something that quite prevalent in the fact a lot of cramping, a lot of muscle cramping things will come if you are low on CoQ10. Correct. It's not necessarily potassium. If you're on statin.
Correct.
And I know that my husband and I started taking that, the CoQ10, because of that when we went on statin drugs. And that helps.
Yes, for sure.
So,
And it's, your muscles are kind of starving of like oxygen a little bit, and that kind of replaces it.
Is it in a ratio to the amount of statin that you're taking? So the higher the dose, the more
Good question.
you need, or?
So if you are on, for every drug, and that's where this comes in handy, for every drug that depletes CoQ10, you are recommended to have 100 milligrams of CoQ10. So,
for each drug?
Yes. Now,
Once daily?
correct. Now, if you're on 4 medications, I would not take 400 milligrams of CoQ10. It's not common for people to take 300 milligrams of CoQ10. I would say average is 200 milligrams.
So if you came off the statin completely, again, is there a time scale that says, okay, your CoQ10 will now build back up to normal, or not?
Correct, but then you have age against you. So it should raise 30 to 40% once you take out that statin, but then as you age, your CoQ10 continuously goes down. So it's kind of just like a curve.
Getting on.
Lisinopril depletes zinc. That increases excretion of zinc. We know zinc right now is huge for immune system. It's good for wound healing. Zinc is huge. Levothyroxine, no, this is the top 10 prescriptions again. Amlodipine, omeprazole, some antibiotics, the zithromycin, amoxicillin, metformin. Metformin is huge too for diabetes. Metformin, we know, depletes folic acid, which is a B vitamin. It depletes B12, and that depletes CoQ10 as well. So a lot of people, we know, if it's a cardiometabolic issue, a lot of people are going to have a cholesterol statin issue, or they're going to have a cholesterol issue, so they're probably going to be on a statin. They're probably going to be maybe diabetic along with that, so that's a metformin. And they could have numerous other things, blood pressure. So right there, you've got almost 3 medications that just deplete one thing, CoQ10, but then you've got several other depletions on the side. So that's where this comes in handy. And if your medication's not on here and you want to talk about it, I'm more than happy to look at your list and go over it with you from a personalized approach. But just notice that these blood pressure medications, a lot of them deplete zinc, a lot of them deplete CoQ10. Now on the back side, I put on there what each one of these vitamins and nutrients do for you. So if you look for CoQ10, if you are deficient in CoQ10, it says it's possible that it will increase your blood pressure. It will increase mitochondrial damage. So that means more mitochondria are energy producing powerhouses in your cell that gives you energy. You may be decreased, you might not have a lot of energy, you may be fatigued. It increases aging process, so you could become more wrinkly faster.
I don't want that. What's mitochondrial?
Mitochondrial is, they're in your cells. You got tons of cells, right? They are little powerhouses. Those are in your cell that kind of give your body energy.
Okay, thank you.
So I have kind of summarized what each one of these do at a depletion state. So if you don't have enough folic acid, you could become anemic. You could have elevated homocysteine and heart disease risk, birth defects. So that will give you an idea. But like I mentioned, I will be happy to go over each one of yours if you wish.
So is there a recommended diet that will give you everything that you're saying that we should have?
No, because remember how I mentioned that our diet does not provide.
No, but it would at least make sure you're on getting something of what you're supposed to get. wouldn't it?
And the most fruits and vegetables are going to be where you find most of these. Some things are nuts, like if you're deficient in selenium, a lot of people that are hypothyroid are deficient in selenium. You can get that from Brazil nuts. There's an awesome website called Linus Pauling.
Say that again.
Spell it out.
Linus, Linus. Pauling is Pauling Institute. They're out of, I think, Oregon State University. I don't have the website address, but if you search that, they have an awesome database on everything I just mentioned as far as from a nutrition standpoint. So where you can find your zinc, where you can find certain nutrients. Great, that's my resource, that's where I go. Right, wrap this up. So there's another handout, and this kind of explains what we just kind of went over. It's this revolving door issue that we're having. So in this case, you go to the doctor's office and you say, I have heartburn. They're gonna say, okay, we'll put you on Prilosec or omeprazole to clear that up. And you let me know how that works. But from my perspective, did they have a discussion with you seeing, is it a high stomach acid or is it a low stomach acid? So this little thing is where I get into it. A lot of times, low stomach acid manifests itself as high stomach acid. If we go further on, you're on Prilosec. Now you stay on Prilosec and your symptoms get better. The pharmacist and doctor's office should have made you aware, which I'm sure they haven't because I never did until I did my studying, that now you're at risk for a magnesium depletion, you're at risk for B12, folic acid, zinc, vitamin D, and calcium. A lot of these are deficiencies because your body is no longer at an acidic state, so the absorption is no longer there. You need stomach acid to absorb your vitamins. And if you have an ulcer or something like that, I mean, you don't want to have an ulcer eating away. So it's a fine balance, but I think it leads to more discussion. So if you're deficient in magnesium now, new symptoms start beginning. So you would think that maybe you're at risk for osteoporosis. Are you having fatigue? Are you now having restless leg? Are you now having headaches? We would think that if you're on Prilosec and you start having more frequent headaches, then are they going to give you something to stop those headaches? Are you going to be taking more ibuprofen along the way? Are you going to be taking more acetaminophen to stop those headaches? But really, what it could have been prevented if we had given you magnesium or something beforehand. So the top drug nutrient depletion for Prilosec, any of those PPIs, Prilosec, Protonix, Zegrid, is magnesium. I always recommend magnesium. So it's kind of like a statin and CoQ10. If you're on Prilosec, you need to be on magnesium.
Because I promise you, we didn't collude because you've picked on the two that the only ones I take.
Okay.
I was diagnosed with, I guess, high acidity because I was getting laryngeal spasms and I couldn't breathe.
Right.
So they put me on omeprazole, same thing. So I really need to go back and say, do I need to be on it now and whatever?
Correct. I can just have that conversation. Because sometimes I think the physicians sometimes forget about it. It's just assumed. It's not like, let's just follow up and see, you know, was it more of a food thing? Was it more of a situational? So I think it never hurts to say, do I need to still be on this?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was sort of triggered a few years back when I was in Hawaii, when they had what they called the VOG, the dust from the volcano
Yeah.
started it to a certain extent.
Right.
But then there was no correlation because it got really bad when we were in Florida a few years back and I couldn't breathe.
Interesting.
But I essentially put it onto this, so I don't know whether it's cured or it's not cured really.
Right. The thing with statins, like omeprazole, it's a slow taper. So if you've been taking it every day, this is why you always have to have this conversation. If you take it every day and you stop it cold turkey, that acid is going to come back with a revenge. And you're going to think that you need it, your body thinks that you need it, but it's your body reacting to it like it's having a withdrawal.
Well, the silly thing was, I never had any symptoms of high acidity.
Yeah,
You know,
So you have to go off of it slowly
you do.
in order to figure out if you still need it or not.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, it's always, that's a conversation you should have with your physician, but yeah.
So on your chart, what is homosystem?
Homocysteine is a marker, so there's homocysteine and C-reactive protein. Homocysteine is an inflammatory marker. It's kind of like it's a cardiovascular risk predictor. If you have constant high homocysteine, the chances of you having a cardiovascular event is higher in 10 years than someone with lower. So the homocysteine is very important, and that's we're going to get on the back here, because omeprazole depletes your B12. Homocysteine, if you have low B12 and low folic acid, your homocysteine levels will be high. So that's kind of like this. We talked about omeprazole causing other issues, but if we look at it from a B12 deficiency, it can cause elevated homocysteine, which you have higher cardiovascular risk. B12 is also associated with fatigue. So if you're fatigued, then it may be a B12 deficiency. We know that omeprazole causes that magnesium depletion. Well, are you having Charlie horses at night? Are you having muscle cramps at night? Are you having more frequent headaches, restless legs? So that kind of falls along between that. And as I mentioned, the higher pH the higher acidity that higher pH equals low acid. If you have lower acid, then you have the less chance of absorbing vitamins. So that's just one medication. Then you throw 10 million on there, and so that's why it's an issue. Okay, so now we're kind of wrapping up. So what can we do to avoid polypharmacy? Because this is the whole issue, right? We got to be transparent to the doctors and staff. If you have multiple doctors, they should all get a list of medications and supplements and vitamins that you're on to keep it everyone in check. Transparent to pharmacists. American Pharmacists Association and probably Michigan Pharmacists Association does not recommend people to go to multiple pharmacies. Now, in this day and age, wherever we can save money is where we can save money, and that includes shopping around different pharmacies, and I get it. But at that point, we need to be transparent and have the responsibility to let these pharmacists know on the medications that we may be taking. Develop good relations with healthcare providers. Ask questions. We're going to hit this in a minute. We need to ask questions. And keep a list of all medication, both prescription and over the counter. My best customer, my favorite customer that I have coming in that pharmacy is one that whips out a sheet and says, this is what I'm on. I love it. So I recommend you do the same. And then I mentioned multiple pharmacies. So it's all about empowerment. A lot of, in the generation that I grew up, and I'm sure the generation that you all grew up in, is we don't ask questions. We trust these healthcare providers. I don't want to say they're God, but that's what's written down, so be it. But nowadays, there's too many irons in the pot. We need to start asking questions.
news is news. It's all the same. But it's not. There's a big difference between local broadcast news and cable news. See, local stations are part of my community, connecting me to local news, weather, and sports on every device. It makes sense. Get the news from the people I trust who actually live here. No agenda, no bias like on cable shout shows or social media, just facts. For news I can trust, I stay local. Support your local stations. Text TV to 52886 today.
So in the sheet here, I gave you an idea of how we can be empowered and how we can maybe prepare and present ourselves and give you ideas of how we can, I guess, help ourselves when we go to the doctor's office. So just remember that we are part, or as a patient, we're part of our healthcare team. It isn't just the nurse, the doctor, the pharmacist, the what have you. We are in that circle too. So we are very important. Healthcare advocacy in the 21st century must be viewed as a partnership between the patient and the provider. Both need to assume more responsibility for doing their parts, and quality healthcare is going to be realized. Older adults need to be more proactive to get what they need, and providers need to be more responsible to deliver all that is necessary for quality care. And that's where these come in. So what they suggest is you prepare for an appointment. You make a list of your concerns, because, you know, if I want to go into a doctor's office, I might forget what I wanted to talk about. You might have a squirrel moment and go off on a tangent talking about something else, and, you know, they only give you, what, 5-10 minutes of their time, and time runs out. So prioritize that too, what you want to talk about. Plan to update your doctor, tell them any changes that might be happening. Often they ask, but plan to update them. Give accurate information, ask pointed questions, speak up. Don't minimize symptoms. Don't say, oh, well, you know, it's just a little cough. Well, you know, maybe that little cough is an asthma exacerbation or something like that. So don't downplay your symptoms. Ask questions. I am more than happy. I've got a lot of people who come in and they're just, you know, I'm so sorry, I'm just taking up your time. That's what I'm here for. I will give you all the time that I have. It's my job. So from a personal point of view, I think that's my responsibility, but I dare say that's a physician's responsibility, or nurse, or what have you. Listen to what the doctor is saying. But again, I expect that other person on the other side of that conversation to listen to. So it goes both ways. And I know this is like the perfect world, and ideally this may not happen, but it's something that we all need to strive for. And make decisions with your healthcare team. I do a lot of consultations on the side from more of a nutrient drug depletion state, and I give people options. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to have to give you choices. Not one choice might not fit in your lifestyle or time of the day. So I think it's very important for them to give you options, not just a directive. You're going to do this. Be clear on what the treatment involves. Consider taking other family members with you. My husband passed away with cancer 3 years ago, and I think both of us needed each other at those appointments, just because, you know, your mind wanders off maybe in one section of this talk, and it's just more ears the better. And then share lingering concerns with your healthcare team. That's kind of obvious. So I think this is a very handy sheet. So to sum up all this, key points. It's alarming statistics. It's a problem. Like I said, this polypharmacy term is going to become more and more popular. It's kind of on the brink of awareness right now, but I think some system, healthcare system, the government needs to recognize this and take it a little bit more serious. Mainstream's doing nothing, and it's our responsibility. more prescriptions. The more prescriptions you're on, you're at a higher risk of polypharmacy and its complications. Hospitalized, if you're even hospitalized, you're at a further risk of polypharmacy. And then often we need to think about, like I mentioned, nutrient depletions, the drug-drug interactions, drug-food interactions, so on and so forth. That's a lot. That's what I fed you. Any questions?
Not that I'm into this in any way, shape or form and wouldn't consider it, but I'm going to ask, what about these cannabis derivatives and all that crap that's now been approved? What role do they play, if any?
I see them as being very helpful, and that's more probably from a pharmacist. Okay, so personal opinion. When my husband was sick, he was sick with cancer, we used THC and CBD on him. We seen that the tumor growth shrunk, and I saw that benefit. I am also an evidence-based person, and as I mentioned, I need statistics, I need studies, I need evidence-based. There's a lot of studies out there that show the benefits of it and that it is helpful. If you go to a dispensary, that's one thing. A lot of their products may not be standardized, it may not be tested. So from a prescription point of view, I need something that is tested. I need something that is proved to show me what it is on a certificate of analysis. I need it to be from more of a medical approach. So there's a lot of dispensaries out there that are run by physicians, and that's the one that we chose, they're using it as medicine. Does that make sense?
But what are the side effects if it's...
It depends.
Term, like you
As from a nutrient depletion type thing?
And all the rest of it, yeah.
It just varies. There are some interactions with drugs, interactions and things like that, but drowsiness is the number one.
So if it's that good, why isn't it touted a bit more?
Because it is not, it's plants. You cannot, and there are some pharmaceutically big pharma made THC capsules and CBD capsules, but a lot of these companies cannot throw a patent on it. So then it becomes more of a patent and moneymaker thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess, well, maybe there's I won't say a stigma necessarily, but you're back to the 60s and the LSD age, aren't you?
There is.
Yeah.
There is. But there's tons of literature out there that supports it depending on what you're using it for.
Okay, thank you.
What about this whole line of essential oils that people are using for, curing things or making pain go away? And I know that I was just reading something too about there's a lot of those oils that do not ever go away. It's in like the PFAS type of a situation where that chemical can stay in your body forever, or you can't dispose of it, those kinds of things. So is that going to be eventually maybe an interaction with it?
I think so, because if I look at, if you walk in my store, I have medications, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the 80% of the medications are derived from plant-based chemical structures way back in the day. I have a wall of plants, so I have my Herbal apothecary, so you can pick, here's a good example. So there's metformin from prescription. I look at my wall of plants and herbs. In a lot of these herbs, you can take a chemical constituent called berberine out of it, right? Berberine and metformin are very close chemically structured. So they base metformin's chemical structure off of berberine. So if you do the right thing, take the right amount of berberine, you could potentially have the same outcome as metformin would. If you look at my walls of essential oils, then you have the plant the components to that, more terpenes, more what's called terpene oils. And that kind of almost falls back with CBD too, because they can, in THC, they have terpenes in there. So that component, if you take those chemical constituents out of that essential oil, that could be beneficial as well.
Okay.
So it all comes down to isolating that and making it into a standardized extract. Like, there's 500 milligrams of this certain terpene. Essential oils don't really do that. So it's hard to kind of put that as a medical point of view. But there are studies out there that, okay, so let me do this. Lavender oil.
Okay.
Selexin is a proprietary blend of a lavender oil. They have actually done studies on lavender oil, standardized lavender oil, compared it to antidepressants such as Paxil, and it came out just as efficacious. Head-on-head study. The downside, well, there wasn't no downside. They found out that the Paxil had more side effects than the lavender oil. So they're even doing studies on that. So it all comes, to me, it's evidence-based. I need something to go by.
Right. Interesting.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you.
And then if you have individual questions, then please let me know. I mean, I'm gonna hang around or take my card and give me a call.
I thought on the sheet of the advertisement for this, that something that was going to be covered was how to dispose of drugs.
I can cover that.
Can you just quickly? Yeah.
It's tricky. A lot of these communities will have drug take-back events. That's what I prefer. They no longer recommend, at one point it was put your prescriptions in coffee grounds or kitty litter, more to just kind of deter people from going through that. Dumping it down the sink or toilet, it's ended up in our water system. I mean, I've seen good studies out there that have shown mutated frogs. Now there's mutated frogs because of the hormones that they find in our environment, in our water. So I know like Oxford Police Station, they have a take-back drug container that's always open. So a lot of people nowadays are just,
Taking it.
yeah.
And they say to remove the label off your bottles, and you can just put the bottles in there.
What I found strange was that pharmacists won't take back your old tablets.
Which, I'm sorry?
Pharmacists don't take back
It's
your old
illegal, I
tablets.
can't, yeah, no,
Right.
there's a clause in either, I think it's the FDA
You
saying
think
that I
that'd be
can.
the obvious place to take them?
Right, yeah.
I know.
But Meyer does have a drop-off spot.
Myers does?
Right.
Oh, good.
As I understand. I was just told but again, take your labels off and just, and I think that they said something about put the drugs within a plastic bag and do it too,
Oh, okay.
so I'm not sure. But check with Meyer.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the police.
Yeah, there's a lot of pharmacy, or there's a lot of companies that I can collaborate with, so they probably collaborate with a company that will
Right.
destroy them for them. But as a pharmacy, I can't destroy them.
My aunt passed away several years ago, and she had medication that were in the sealed gel pack, the
Yeah.
sealed packs, and nobody would even take those.
Yeah.
But I just found people who took them, in those medications, and, other than that, and at that time, there weren't places to take
No,
those.
this is just.
I mean, this is just recent.
It is, and it's nice.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Lily's gonna eat lunch with us, so